Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Hemmings Hot Rod BBQ podcast. On this episode, we have Mr. Phillip Cochran of US Radiator. Now, for those that don't know, US Radiator has been in business for over 50 years. They are one of the top best suppliers in the United States for OE radiators, for aftermarket, for custom. I've used their products many times in my own personal cars, and we just had them on for our IROC rehab series that we just did. So Phillip, how you doing, man? Welcome to the show.
Doing great. How you?
Doing okay, man. It's thankfully it's sunny out. No more rain. Pretty happy about that. So
it's cloudy here.
Well, you guys are located down south. You guys are in Alabama, is that correct?
Northeast Alabama, Gadsden, Alabama. That's right.
Okay, and you guys have been in business, am I right when I said over 50 years? I think I am.
Yeah, US Radiator has been in business over 50 years.
So how did US Radiator, how did you guys start?
We started, well, we're actually from Bryce Thomas Radiator. So we started Bryce Thomas Radiator in 1956, so over 60 years.
Wow.
And then Don told me the story about how he owned US Radiator, and he was a delivery guy. And then he wound up owning it and brought it to what it is. And we purchased US Radiator out of California 3 years ago, and moved it from California to Alabama.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. So now when we talk about applications for cooling, right? I mean, in the last 60 years, cooling technology has changed quite a bit, largely due to, I'm assuming, different materials. I'm assuming, engine capacity, application, things of that nature. Most people, I think, know you guys from hot rodding, but you guys do applications for just about anything that needs cooling. Is that correct?
That's right. From street sweepers to drilling rigs to forklifts to hot rods. Yeah.
Holy shit. So how does that factor into what you do? So for instance, what is the biggest segment of your business come from? Does it come from industry, or does it come from just the hot rodding community?
I would say we're probably 60% industrial.
Wow.
Meaning the gen sets, the drilling rigs, over the road trucks, even earth moving equipment.
Wow.
So that's probably the majority of our business, 60%.
Okay. Well, when it comes to kind of hot rodding and stuff like that, like I mentioned, the technology has changed over the last 60 years. So how have you gone from, say, supplying a radiator for like a nice, like a perfect example? You guys were just involved in the IROC rehab show we did with our IROC, or 87 IROC Camaro with our 350 small block. When you talk about a stock radiator from, say, 87, an OE radiator, right? We're now talking 30 years ago. Okay. So how has that technology changed, and how have you adapted new engines or new radiators to do new engines? So for instance, like our small block was pretty traditional, right? Not that massive of a change, more power, but not a huge change. But if somebody were to say, I don't know, like a supercharged LT4 or something like that requires more cooling capacity over stock, is that something where the hot rod enthusiast or the builder would call you and say, this is the application that I have, this is what I'm going to do with the vehicle, what do you recommend? Are you finding yourselves educating the customer a lot?
We are. I mean, it depends. We try to figure out what the customer wants, how much space he has. And thicker's not always better. So everybody always comes to me and says, I want a 4-row. They always want a 4-row. Well, 4 rows aluminum is almost 5 inches thick. So you don't need that much radiator unless you have, earth moving equipment or something like that. So we try to educate the customer on what it takes to cool that particular application, whether they have AC, automatic transmission, how much space do you have? We need a good set of cooling fans. So do they want copper brass? Do they want aluminum? and what's their preference, because we can do both. And
Okay.
that's the thing. Bryce Thomas was a manufacturer, brazing. We have a brazing plant and everything in aluminum. So US Radiator was traditionally copper brass. So we
Okay.
joined those two companies together. So now we can do either or.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. So do you find that when somebody calls you up that they are willing to learn, or do you have to manage people? So for instance, if somebody calls up and says, just like you had said, I want the biggest, thicker 4-row aluminum radiator, blah, blah, blah. This is exactly what I want. Are there times where you're like, are you sure? Or are you just throwing out words to me that you've heard on the internet?
Yeah.
Like, how often does that happen?
All the time. But they listen, and they understand once we explain what it's going to take to cool their system. I mean, because doing a 4-row in aluminum, we can do it all day long. We do it on the industrial side, and once we kind of educate them on that, they get it. Copper brass pretty much simple. You want 3 or 4-row. It just depends on what type of core design, whether you want high efficiency or the Optima series, which is very aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
So they get it. It
Okay.
just depends on what we try to look at each individual vehicle and what they're putting in it, and try to get them the best cooling they can get.
Okay. So let
With
me
the
ask you
space
this.
they have allowed. So
Right. Yeah, exactly. Well, I look at
a lot of times the radiator's the last thing they think about, and they didn't move the engine back far enough. So they only have 3 inches, and they've got to cool a big block with a blower. And you know what I'm saying?
I absolutely, well, that was going to be one of my next things. Like, I've seen
Okay.
so many of these, whether it's a 32 or it's a mid 40s car with these beautiful, beautiful grills on them, right? And
Oh,
they've
yeah.
got, just like you said, they got a big block with a 671 on it, and they've got maybe a foot and a half of grill space. And it's like, what are you going to do with that? Like, how? And I feel like you're absolutely right. I think cooling is one of the last things they think about. And then
Mm.
on top of cooling, it's actually, and I don't know why this is such a big deal for people, but actually putting the correct shroud on something
Right.
to make that work. So have you spoken to people when they'll call you with a bill and they said, okay, well, I actually only have this much space. And have you gone back to them to like, well, that's great, but you're not going to cool it, not with the space that you have. And so do you have people re-engineered their builds because of the stuff that you've told them?
They have, yes. They've had to.
Right.
So, they'll call us up and they'll say, I have 3 inches. And I say, okay, 3 inches for the radiator, that's pretty good. How much do you have for the fan? No, I only have 3 inches. Okay. So, we have pretty good luck, but I mean, we have to kind of think out of the box a little bit
Yeah. Yeah.
and engineer some things. But, sometimes it's just, all they can do is a pusher fan,
Right.
and because they just did not leave enough room.
Right.
So,
Well, in regards to the materials, right? We talk about copper and brass versus aluminum. What
yeah.
are the benefits of each one? Because you have some people that are saying we're sticking with copper brass, and especially in the hot rodding community, everybody's like, well, I'm going with a big fat aluminum radiator. What are the differences between the two, and where would you use each application?
Okay, aluminum is going to cool better in a smaller space. Okay.
Okay.
So because, aluminum is brazed with aluminum, so there's no insulator. So it's copper brass is brazed with solder. So that acts as an insulator. Even though copper brass is a better heat transfer alloy than aluminum, it'll just, the aluminum is much greater. We can go 1-row, 1.5 inches and cool like a 3-row copper brass. So you're
Wow.
talking 1.5 inches versus 2 inches. So that's a 1/2 inch, a half inch in the hot rod
That's a
world.
lot.
What we're talking about a while ago. It's a mile. It's a mile. So it's basically how the copper brass is manufactured versus the aluminum is manufactured. So
Okay. Okay. So then when are you finding many of the traditionalists are sticking with copper brass as opposed to going aluminum?
yeah, pretty much. I mean,
Okay.
you know, they probably had in the past, they probably had aluminum radiators that have you know, had electrolysis or something like that, or, you know, or have a ding in it and can't get it repaired. So they
Right.
like to stay with copper brass. You know,
Okay.
that's usually it's a history there.
Okay. Well, I know for our application in the IROC, one of the things our original radiator was kind of, you know, plastic concealed and everything, and you manufactured a beautiful new one that replicated the original radiator, and not only that, but it dropped and fit perfectly into place. And it
Mhm.
was, if I'm not mistaken, it was copper brass, wasn't it?
It was all copper brass.
Yeah.
Sure was.
So do you find people that are updating these older cars, like these 80s and 90s cars, they want to stick with the original look, but they want more efficient cooling?
Oh yeah, all the time. Yeah.
Okay.
So
So
we're able to either go copper brass or go aluminum.
okay.
Because yours was plastic tanks with aluminum core.
Yeah.
What was in the IROC. So we wanted something. I asked you originally, do you want to go copper brass or do you want to go aluminum? And I just felt like it was a great project to build a copper brass high
Yeah.
efficiency cooling. It would fit in there just like the OE. So it was a perfect match. But we could have done that in all aluminum too, and it would have been nice.
Okay. Let me ask you in regards to testing. So for instance, like you know, I'm doing a car right now, which is just a big 900 horsepower supercharged engine, blah 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 blah. Right, a stock radiator and an old Mopar is not going to cut that. Um, do you, when people call you up and they say, okay, well, this is the amount of airflow that I have, meaning this is the size of my grill. I have a 6.2 liter with a blower on it. It's making X of 900 horsepower or so. I need it to sit in Alabama traffic, right? In 100-degree weather with the AC on kill and not overheat. When you hear something like that, do you kind of take it in and go, okay, this is, you know, that many cubic inches, supercharger, got to deal with that, got to deal with airflow. How do you guys test something like that? Or how do you come up with the formula to build a radiator like that?
The biggest thing is experience. You
Yeah.
know, years of manufacturing copper brass, years of manufacturing aluminum, and just in real life applications and watching those. I mean, cooling 1,000 horsepower out here in the shop with a basically a 32 Ford 3-row was not a problem. But there again, we did not have the space. That was the most space we had.
Right.
So you know, we use kind of a rule of thumb. Now I use an engineer when we have all the data. He's an engineer and he has to have all the data,
All the data. Yeah.
all the data, which a lot of times, you know, builders don't have, you know, or
Right.
whether it be an individual or even a shop. So we use a lot of, you know, just our knowledge of being able to build and all the thousands of builds we've done over the years.
What is the most overlooked piece of data that people leave out when they're giving you, I need to cool this, right? What is the most overlooked or left out piece of information they fail to give you?
That I need to cool this. Ooh, that's a tough one. I would say probably the airflow, you know, and allowing, you know, and then of course going and allowing the space for the proper fan and shroud setup, as you mentioned earlier,
Yep.
you know, because all that's critical, you know, all that's critical.
Yeah. Well, when it comes to shrouds, I'm always amazed when I see, you know, and I look at a ton of cars, right? Whether it's just my hobby, right? You'll go online, you'll look at cars, what's for sale, what's not for sale, so on and so forth. Um, the amount of cars that I see without a fan shroud is staggering to me.
Right.
right? Why do you think it is that people leave it off? And you think they understand the importance of actually channeling that airflow and putting it? It's like, how important is a shroud on a car?
What we always tell the customer, it's important that we get, because the radiator's square or rectangular. So we
Mhm.
want to pull that air through every inch of that core
Yeah.
and direct it through the valve. So we always try to encourage shrouds. A lot of times there's not room. They've already, so we come up with a fan ring, which basically puts the fan about as close as you can get to the core
Okay.
without damaging it, and to just gain another half inch. But we try to optimize the size of the fan, the quality of the fan. The quality of the fan is the most important thing. I mean, you got to go with one of the top quality manufacturers of fan, because it's all in the motor. It's not the blades. I mean, you're going to pay, 3 times the money, but
Yeah.
that's what you're buying. You're buying the motor. You want something that's going to perform under that extreme heat load that's being thrown at that fan. So, but we try to encourage people to put a shroud on there just to draw the air through every inch of that radiator.
Yep.
So,
It's interesting you mentioning fans, right?
mhm.
Because I think a lot of times, and I've bought cars like this where you're like, oh, it's got a dual fan setup,
Mhm.
12 to world moves X amount of air through it. But the fans are cheap. And it as soon as you look at it, and you're like, this isn't moving any air, right? And I think it gets to the point where, listen, we all know that building a car is not a cheap endeavor. Or I should say, building a car right is not a cheap endeavor.
Exactly.
Right. And I think cooling is one of the most overlooked factors in this. In fact, when we start looking at builds, knowing how I think a lot of people, most people drive their cars that they don't consider cooling. So, for instance, do a hot rod power tour, right? Do any type of cross country trip in an old car. The biggest thing that hot rodders worry about is that red light when it's 100 degrees out,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Because that they're sitting there and they're just watching that temperature gauge creep up and up and up and up. And I
Yeah,
always tell people that is not how you are supposed to live your life behind the wheel of a hot rod,
exactly.
right? You're supposed to be able to sit at that red light if you have air conditioning with the AC on, just like a modern car, and cool it and
Mm.
have that be noise. And I have spoken to I don't know how many people that said, well, you're never going to cool a car with this much power, and you never, and in that those kind of temperatures. And I go, wait. Manufacturers are building cars now with 1,000 horsepower. They're doing it. So
Yeah.
why can't we as the enthusiasts do it? Right?
Right. Right. Exactly. So
Are there applications that you find that might need one or two different radiators?
one or two, like auxiliary radiator.
Yeah. Like, do you ever get, because I know some cars have they might have 2 or 3 oil coolers and 2 radiators and stuff like that. Do you ever get applications like that? And that could also be like industrial stuff like that.
I would say not too much. It's like I said earlier on that 1,000 horsepower. Excuse me, it was 2,000 horsepower.
Yeah.
So we could only get a 3-row aluminum radiator, basically a 32 Ford is what it was that
Yeah.
we modeled it after. And we thought we may have to put an auxiliary radiator on that one if it didn't cool it, but it cooled it fine. So
Huh.
we usually don't. I'm trying to think of one that we have, and I can't think of one really.
Okay.
So
Okay.
we're usually pretty good about solving people's problems, and that's what we like to do.
Yeah.
Sometimes our backs against the wall, but we really like to try to do it.
Very good. Well, how has the technology changed? So, and again, these new engines are making 7, 8, 900 horsepower. Like we're at the GM booth at PRI this past week, and they just introduced a 632,000 horsepower crate engine, right?
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's a big old lump of a thing, naturally aspirated, and you're going, okay, well, I kind of want that now, right? Because it's the biggest. How does US Radiator, when crate engines like that or engines like that are released to the public, Do you find that you have to go and say, okay, well, we're going to have to really kind of up our technology? Or how often are you looking at new technology, new metals, new cooling practices, new this and that to incorporate into your business? Is that something that you're kind of always in the back of your mind being like, all right, we got to try this and do that and do this?
Well, we're always looking for new designs and creating new designs. It's like right now in our aluminum side, we carry 3 different tube profiles. Your standard is 1 inch. A lot of times it's called 26 millimeter. Then you have 1.25 inch, and that may have been what the IROC had in it originally, it's like 1.25 inch. And then you have 1.5 inch tube. So we can bank those anyway. We can cross flow them, triple flow them, and create more cooling within that envelope area that we have. New fin technologies as far as tighter fin ratios, fins per inch and tighter centers.
Yeah.
So those are the things we look at constantly. And then obviously fans. Sure. We keep talking about fans, but fans.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of, the brushless fans that are moving a lot of air, so those are the things we're always trying to make a better mousetrap per se.
Right. Gotcha.
And our copper brass is, the Optima core is, that fin's a little bit over 1/4 inch tall, 14 fins per inch. It's a lot of tube and fin in a small space.
Right.
But there again, because it is so dense, you have to have a good cooling fan to be able to pull air through that radiator, sitting at a red light or in a parade, or what it may be.
Gotcha. Now, do you guys also do applications for European cars?
We do. It's not our main thing, but we do. Well, I make, I own a TR6, so I created a TR6, set 1976 TR6, and it's amazing how many of those we sell. Of all year models, TR6s, across the world, we sell tons of those.
Oh, wow. Now, would you do something? So like if somebody had like a perfect example, I got a buddy with an early 70s Datsun Z car. He's got a 240Z.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And like he's been having a hell of a time cooling that thing. Is that someone who'd be able to call you and say, listen, this is what I have. What do you got?
Oh, yeah. People call us all the time with, that's how we got into it. I mean, they would call us and say, I have a 1928 REO Speedwagon. And I'm like, hey, what is an REO Speedwagon?
That's random, but sure.
So we built one. He sent us his sample. We built it. We do custom stuff like that all the time. And whether it be they send us the unit or we do, pictures and drawings. And because we'll create a CAD drawing before we build anything.
Okay.
And to make sure that it's that our interpretation of what the customer needs is what we're doing. Just make sure we're all on the same page. Yeah.
Yeah. So if somebody has REO Speedway, perfect example. For them to be able to take, if they have the original radiator, can they take that? They'll send it to you. You'll look at it, make sure the dimensions are okay, and then basically reconstruct your own from scratch, but with all improved materials, with all improved cooling capacities, everything from start to finish?
Exactly. Say like, let's just say they wanted to put LS in that REO Speedwagon. We would make it fit the original space for the LS. Yes.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's fantastic to know.
All the time.
Oh, see, that's fantastic to know, because I know so many people out there that a lot of times they'll look and they'll go to the different parts warehouses and stuff like that. And I don't think many consumers know that they have that option, right? To go out and actually get a full-on custom radiator made to their specifications with improved cooling inside, whether it's copper, brass, whether it's aluminum. That's a very, very cool thing. I didn't know that. I think that's great.
Yeah, since we are the manufacturer, like we manufacture the cores and everything, we're able to do that. So we don't rely on another supplier to make me a core. I just build it from scratch. I design it, I build tanks and all, brackets.
Okay. And so when you do, so you do obviously hot rods, you do industrial. Do you guys do stuff for marine cooling as well?
We do. We have done
Okay.
stuff too, yeah. Do a lot of offshore rigs. We do a lot of boats. I've got a post on my website where we've done circular marine cooling radiators for boats.
Oh, wow.
Circular. Yeah. Look like an inner tube. So
yeah, you guys really, so basically whatever anybody wants, they could call you and you'll be like, well, okay. So basically you're not scared of taking anything on.
No, we enjoy those special projects.
Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty fun.
Well, that's pretty good to know. All right. Well, I'll tell you, man. Phillip, I just wanted to thank you for coming on, because I think there's so many things about cooling that people don't understand, and they don't understand the technology behind it. I think a lot of it is reading stuff off the internet without actually going to the source like yourselves, and just calling and asking the appropriate questions, right? And just educating themselves, as opposed to, just talking to their buddy who's had the same cooling problems for 30 years and he hasn't solved them. So it's like, why are you asking them the question? Like, go out and talk to the professionals about how to actually improve your vehicle, So let me ask you, where are the best places that people can get in contact with you if they either have questions, they're looking for new radiators, custom applications, etc.?
They can call us, or they can go on the website and email through the website. And we answer our emails every day. A lot of times I'm answering the emails on my phone at night, so it depends on the question and whether or not I want to let somebody else answer it or not, but I get them on my phone constantly, and I always have it with me, so I answer Saturday, Sunday, Monday through Friday, every day. So yeah.
And you guys are just usradiator.com, correct?
Right, usradiator.com, cgj.com, and then bricethomasradiator.com.
Okay.
And,
then you're also have a pretty good Facebook following as well, so people could find you there as well, correct?
On Facebook, Instagram, yes, sure can.
Okay, fantastic. Well, Phillip, thank you so much for coming on. To everybody out there listening, if you have questions, call them. Call US Radiator. Ask them the question. I've been using these guys. This is not an exaggeration. I've had their products in my cars for probably going on 20 years now. Both in my big block Charger and my Daytona. So, and this is before I was really ever in the automotive business doing hosting and podcasting or anything like that. They're a proven kind of leader in the space, and is somebody, again, who is a customer first and kind of an interviewer second. I can tell you from experience that their products work. So, it's been a great relationship, and I think that we're looking forward to you seeing the IROC. And if people haven't watched yet, go to our YouTube channel at Hemmings on YouTube. Check out our new IROC cities, to where the US Radiator put their radiator in our car, and it works beautifully. But otherwise, Phil, thank you for coming on, man. It's always great to talk.
All right. Good talking to you, bro.
All right, sir. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks again, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Take care. Bye. Thanks for listening, folks. And again, please subscribe to the Hot Rod BBQ podcast. If you're on Spotify, check us out there. Subscribe to it on iTunes. And if you are going to go to YouTube, make sure you go to the Hot Rod BBQ podcast and hit that subscribe button, and we'll come to you every week.